Hi everyone, Materim here with another Warhammer 8th Edition battle report. I know it's been a long time since we've done this. The boys and I were talking about it, and it's actually been over a year since we've actually broken out the models and played. So we decided to get together last night, throw a couple of games down. Fortunately, this is the only one we got a battle report for. But we think we're going to be doing it more often, and hopefully we'll have some more battle reports up for you guys. So this one is going to be between Michael and Skip. Michael is playing his Dwarves, of course, versus Skip's Tomb Kings in a 2,500 point battle line scenario. And I want to take a minute before we get into the armies to talk about this terrain setup. The terrain setup just completely went Michael's way. As you can see, he's got a lot of walls to hide behind. He's got several buildings. And that little mausoleum there in the center of the wall and the fence area is actually a dwarven brew house. So within 6 inches of that, his units are going to be unbreakable, which means that the Tomb Kings really have an uphill battle this time. All right, starting on the left side here with Michael's Dwarves. They are a little hard to tell apart, but we'll go ahead and start with the bottom left. As you can see here, that is a unit of 25 Iron Breakers. Full command, they have the rune of slowness on them. Behind that is a unit of 25 Hammerers with full command. They have the Master Rune of Groth One Eye. And in with them is his Dwarvish Lord, who has a runic weapon with 2 runes of might, a rune of speed, as well as the magnificent armor of Vorik Beetlebrow, which is the 2-up armor with a 3-up ward save against all attacks strength 6 or better. Bottom right is going to be a unit of Longbeards. They have hammer and shield and full command. Behind them is a second unit of Longbeards with great weapons, and hanging out with them is the Battle Standard Bearer, who is a Thane, and he has the Master Rune of Grungy. He has a Runesmith, which looks like the Runesmith is in that first unit I talked about, the Iron Breakers. Fortunately, the dwarves all kind of look alike, so it's hard to tell. On top of the building, you can see he also has an organ gun. I don't believe the organ gun... Oh, no. The organ gun has the rune of forging and the rune of burning on it. So it's pretty well set up. He has 1 gyrocopter with no changes or upgrades. And then over here he has 1 cannon. The cannon has the rune of forging on it. So then we'll get started with Skip's Tomb King setup. He is going to have a small unit of 5 skeletal horse archers scouted up to start getting in the way of that cannon. Then on his main line, starting on the right, he's going to have 3 sepulchral stalkers. I'm just going to call them snakes because I cannot pronounce that first word to save my life. Then he's got a big old brick of chariots, a total of, looks like 7 chariots there. Next to that is a Hierotitan. Then he's got a pretty sizable unit of Tomb Guard. They have 34 in that unit with full command. He also has the Standard of the Undying Legion with them. He also has almost all of his characters in that unit. His general, which is the Lich High Priest, also the Hierophant. We are playing with not the Undead United rules. This is Tomb King, so if that guy dies, he is going to have some crumble to deal with. But he ends up doing Talisman of Preservation on him, which is 4-up ward save, and he is the Lord of Nehekara. Then we've got he has a Tomb Herald in there, which is his Battle Standard Bearer, and he has the Armor of Destiny. And there's also a Necrotech in there with an enchanted shield. Next to that is a unit of 20 skeletal archers. Hanging out with them is his last character, a Lich Priest with a Dispel Scroll. Not horribly useful against the dwarves, but it works. Then there is the Necrolith Colossus behind that. Then he has a Screaming Skull Catapult and the Casket of Souls behind that. Alright, so we'll go ahead and get into the match. First turn goes to the Dwarves. They're actually moving up. I think he wants to get within the 6 inches of that brew house and hold those walls for the undead to come at him. These are two very, very slow armies. The undead can't march, and the dwarves are movement 3. So movement, there's not going to be a lot of advanced maneuvering in this particular game. And he knows with his lines being protected by that organ gun, the undead have to come to him, so he's going to get into the best position he possibly can first. He knows that the archers, or the horse archers over here, are going to go for that cannon, so he maneuvers over his gyrocopter to deal with them when they do. And that's pretty much... Okay, yeah. This is in shooting. He does get some shots off with the organ gun, but as you can see, it only kills 4 of the archers. So not a huge amount, particularly with their ability to regrow themselves, but it's better than nothing. So we go into Tomb King's turn 1. Of course, the archers move up here so they can get shots at the cannon. He's also essentially doing this to block as much of the line of sight on the cannon as possible. Last turn, it failed to wound the Necrolith Colossus, so he doesn't want, or the Hierotitan, I think it was. So it hasn't done anything yet, and Skip certainly wants to make sure it doesn't do anything. So blocking up line of sight's really the only way he's got to do that at this point. You can see the snakes start moving up towards the cannon as well, and this point Skip realizes that he kind of made a mistake in his deployment. That image with the winged fellow on the rock in front of him is a sphinx. So it's basically blocking terrain. That big unit of chariots is stuck behind it, and he really doesn't have any good way to maneuver him around. So he's decided he's going to attempt to go the long way and circle around, but I think he's going to have some issues with the Tomb King's lack of movement to be able to do that. Everything else here starts moving up slowly, which is pretty much the key word of this battle. But they really know, particularly with this Tomb Guard, it's got to get into those dwarves to do anything, so he's going to start crawling forwards. So we go into magic phase. The dwarves use, the dwarves use their Rune of Spell Eating, which I didn't mention, but the Rune of Spell Eating to stop the multiple attacks from the archers, but then the Lich Priest gets off, or the High Lich Priest gets off the 5-up ward save spell, which regrows all of the archers that died from the organ gun attack. And I think some other spell went off here. Oh, he got the movement spell. So yeah, he bubbled the movement spell, so everybody got a little bit of extra movement here. Then he used his grape shot catapult, ends up his skull catapult ends up hitting directly on the building, gets really lucky, and takes out the organ gun. So right now, as strange as it sounds, the Tomb Kings are winning the shooting battle against the dwarves. So then the archers get to shoot. They take a shot at those hammer shield dwarves on the right side of his block, and actually manage to kill a single dwarf. So considering they're shooting at 5s and wounding on 5s, and then having to get through dwarvish armor, Skip was pretty happy with that kill. So we go into Dwarves turn 2, and you start to see some movement out of the Dwarven unit. Longbeard's on the right there, running straight towards the wall. He's essentially going to try and stop the Tomb Guard from getting into things. The Hammerers decide to veer off to the left. They're the unit on the most left, and try and go around the other way and essentially avoid his big units, ideally trying to get to the catapult and the Casket of Souls back there. His other two units start, like, reform and start moving in that direction, in the right direction as well. But I think this is the point where Michael is realizing that maybe when he chose to put down the buildings, he put them a little too close, because he's running into a little bit of a choke point here where he's having trouble maneuvering his units around. Over here, the gyrocopter moves so that he can roast the skeletal horse archers. And during shooting, sorry for the blurry picture, one skeletal horse archer is left after the heat gun, or the steam gun from the gyrocopter. And then the cannon, because the one left is still blocking his line of sight where he wanted to shoot, he decides to grape shot the single remaining skeletal horse archer and botches the roll and doesn't actually kill anybody. So that's a lot of fun. So we go into Tomb King's turn 2, and the skeletal horse archer decides just to be a complete dick and move an inch off of the cannon and turn sideways. So he's blocking all of the line of sight there. The snakes are going after the gyrocopter, and the chariots are coming after them. No big whoop. He went into the water this turn and found out that the water, it was a mysterious lake we use. It was just a normal lake, so there was nothing unusual there. And again, he's starting the move up. I'm not entirely sure what his plan here is with the extra wide unit of archers, whether he's wanting to use them as a speed bump or something, but you can see a little bit of congestion in the Tomb Kings here. I personally probably would have slid them to the side or reformed them or something to let his combat units get up a little first, but hindsight being 2020 and all that. So, Magic was, I think he got the 5-up ward save off, but it was no big deal. Shooting phase goes on, and the snakes try to use their stone stare at the gyrocopter. 2 of the 3 snakes misfire. The other one doesn't do a wound, so by the end of the wounds suffered from misfire, one of the snakes is dead, and the other one has taken 2 wounds. Over here, the archers get awesome again and kill one more dwarf. And then we go into the dwarves' turn, and as you can see, movement here is a bit better. He ends up trying to charge the skeleton archers with both his iron breakers, which are the ones that succeeded, and his longbeards, which failed. So after the failed charge and the completed charge, this is what they're looking at. He set himself up here pretty nice with those iron breakers. The likelihood that those skeletons are going to last is pretty nil, and it's going to set him for a beautiful overrun right into the Necrolith Colossus. So it's pretty good. He's hoping that if he does get that overrun, that he'll be out of the front arc of the Tomb Guard, so he won't eat a flank charge, but we'll have to see how that goes. Then over here, he's got some more movement in the back. He's essentially continuing to try and move the hammerers around. It's just slow goings. I mean, 6-inch move even on the march. It takes a lot of time to get across the board. And then he comes over here to the side with the gyrocopter, going to try and, I think he tried to drop the bomb, like the once-a-game bomb on the chariots, but didn't really accomplish anything. And, oh, I am sorry for this blurry picture, but the cannon tries to grape shot the skeleton again and fails for the second time. So then we go into combat, and yeah, in combat, these poor skeleton archers had no chance. He ended up killing about half the unit just in combat, and it was enough to crumble not only the rest of the unit, but the Lich Priest that was hanging out in there as well. So pretty messy all the way around. And the skeletons obviously didn't even kill a dwarf. And the overrun is successful, and he slams face first into the Necrolith Colossus, which does succeed in getting him out of the front arc of the Tomb Guard as well. So it's not a good day for the Tomb Kings at this point. So we go into Tomb King's turn 3, and Skip decides he's going to get into the battle. He ends up declaring a charge with the Tomb Guard into the Dwarf Longbeards, which succeeds. And then he swift reforms the chariots because he's going to try and shoot their bows at the gyrocopter. So magic phase goes off. He ends up miscasting the 5-up ward save, and gets it off. And then we go into combat. The 5-up ward save is just amazing in terms of saving him. Between that and the fact that Michael is just rolling like garbage for wounds, actually has the Tomb Guard win this one. It's only 2 wounds on either side, and static res gives it to the Tomb Guard, but I don't think they're within the 6 inches of the brew house, but they're dwarves, so he's looking at like a leadership 8 or 9 rerollable, and gets it, so he's not going to break. I don't know why. Oh no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That whole thing I was talking about, that was actually the damage from the miscast. 2 damage on either way, because here comes shooting. The skull catapult kills 1 dwarf. Boy, I'm so rusty at doing this. I haven't done a battle report in over a year. You can really tell, I think. Over here, no damage is done from the shooting at the gyrocopter. No huge surprise there. Then we go into combat. This is much better. The dwarves do, I think, 1 wound on the Necrolith Colossus. Or no, they did a few wounds on the Necrolith Colossus. It thunder stomps like a beast and takes out a bunch of dwarves, but the combat res is on the dwarf side enough where the Colossus finishes its crumble and dies. And then he reforms facing the flank of the Tomb Guard. Now here is the combat that actually happened. Bunch of dwarves die, only a couple of the Tomb Guard die. So the fight goes to, as I pretty much said earlier, fight goes to the Tomb Guard, but the dwarves are not going anywhere because of dwarf leadership. And actually, wow, it looks like they did actually break. Okay. Forget what I just said on that last one as well. Wow, I'm sorry for this across the board. I'm really hoping I'll get better at this with more practice. But yeah, so the dwarves break. They run through the unit of great weapon longbeards here. The Tomb Guard do not catch them and get stuck here right in front of the other dwarves. The fleeing dwarves are next to the building, you can see there. So then it's dwarf turn 3, or maybe 4. Well, dwarf turn, and in comes the charge on the front and the flank. Both units get in without much difficulty. And just for shits and giggles, the gyrocopter charges into the back of the Hyro Titan. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to go, because it looks like it's taken a couple of wounds. I guess it did take some wounds from shooting last turn. The Longbeard unit here rallies. I know it still shows their banner. We had forgotten about the whole rule of the banner dying. It disappears a little later, but the Tomb Kings do get points for that. And the hammers slowly continue to come around. at this point, he's not sure really where to go with them. I don't know that we've got enough of the game to go now that there's nothing for him to sort of bounce charges off of to get them moving more. So he's not really sure where those hammerers are going. Over here in shooting, he finally kills that one horse archer that's been blocking his cannon up the whole game. Then we go to combat. The gyrocopter can't do anything to the Hyro Titan, and it turns around and destroys the copter. And over here, this is a bad fight for the Tomb Guard. Even with their 5-up ward save, which they've had, he successfully cast pretty much all game. The Dwarves are just putting out a beating. As you can see, he loses a lot of Tomb Guard, but he does do some damage back. It's a loss for the Tomb Guard, but they crumble a bit, and his Necrotect at this point actually took a point of damage from, I think it was from the Thane up front in that unit, but not enough to kill it, and not enough to cause the unit to crumble, so they're holding on, and he's hoping for a big magic phase next turn to rebuild that unit. So we go into Tomb King's turn 4, and the Hyro Titan charges into the flank of the Iron Breakers, hoping to help out the Tomb Guard a little bit. The Snakes charge the cannon, and the Chariots reform and start moving around this way. I think the logic here is he wants the Chariots close enough that if some miracle happens and those hammers cross the halfway line, they'll have something to deal with other than his catapult and the Casket of Souls. He ends up getting, in the magic phase, getting some spells off, including the 5-up ward save again, which is going to help rebuild some of that unit of Tomb Guard. Pretty much to the full again. So it's pretty good. I mean, he basically undid all of the advances that the Dwarves had done in combat last turn. So they go into combat now, with the Dwarves losing a point of strength from not charging, because they get that bonus. It's a much more even fight. There's a couple of Dwarves lost in the Iron Breakers, and only 3 lost from the Tomb Guard. Again, the biggest thing here is Michael is rolling like a ridiculous number of 1s to wound, so it's really just not, even these great weapons are just not doing anything to the Tomb Guard. Over here, the Snakes destroy the cannon. Not a huge surprise. So we go into the Dwarf's turn. This unit decides to go hide in the building, because there's really not anything they're going to be able to do at this point. And Michael, seeing the Chariots coming, kind of second guessing himself, swift reforms and starts moving the Hammerers back. Unfortunately, I'm kind of watching this and I'm thinking it's a little too late. I don't think he's got enough movement to make it really matter, particularly with, I mean, there's no open space for them to get into the fight with the Tomb Guard here. We go into combat. Certainly more Dwarves are dying. He's killing more Tomb Guard, but between an amazing use of the 5-up ward save and Michael's inability to wound, it's still holding on. I think technically the Tomb Guard won this fight, but it was by 1 or 2. And of course, neither of those dwarf units give a crap, because they're within 6 inches of the unbreakable dwarf brewhouse. So we go into movement. The Chariots on the Tomb King side move up some more, but again, it looks like it's going to take forever for them to get anywhere. Spells go off, and at this point, the Necrotech died last turn, and those 2 wounds I think are actually on his Lich Priest. So his Lich Priest is really close to dying, but he is going to get the 5-up ward save off again, which means that at this point, I think he's successfully cast that 5-up ward save every turn of the game. And the dwarves are just failing to dispel it. During shooting, Skip takes great advantage of the fact that the dwarves here are in the building and fire bombs them with the flaming attacks from the skull catapult and does a lot of damage. Combat goes on. Again, the dwarves are being eaten down. I think there's only 4 of the great weapon wielders there, and he's actually making good progress into the iron breakers too, and losing very, very few. So I think he's only down about 3 Tomb Guard from what the unit started with. The Iron Breakers on the end do manage to get 1 wound off on the Hyro Titan this turn as well. But again, the undead seem to be winning the war of attrition here. Then, okay, I see. The one thing that did happen during that fight that was important is that he finally did take out the Hierophant. So things start to crumble. He doesn't actually take any crumble from anything else in the army at this point, except for the catapult, which he rolls double 6s on the leadership check, and the catapult just explodes. So we go into dwarf turn, realizing that he doesn't like the re-rolling to wound from the fire from being in a building. The Longbeard unit with hammer and shields comes out of the building. The hammerers come around here, but as you can see, it is turn 6, so they're not going to get anything. They're just coming to watch and see what happens. Combat goes on. The dwarves take a few more lumps, but they're actually starting to put some hurt in the undead. I think they take out another 5 or 6 and another wound on the Hyra Titan. At this point, Skip just needs in his next round's combat, he needs to take out one of these units. Because right now they're both being held up by characters. The likelihood of getting the characters and the units is pretty small. He's just going to try and go into the units and get the points for it if he can. So top of final turn for the Tomb Kings. Crumble goes really bad, and the Casket of Souls explodes from the crumble. So then we go into combat, and the undead get done what they need to get done, at least in part. The Ironbreakers unit is completely destroyed by a massive thunderstomp from the Hyro Titan, but the Tomb Guard fail to destroy the Longbeard unit by a single model. So all that's left there is, I think, the champion of the Longbeards and his BSB, and the Runesmith is there. But all the dwarves get to do, I think the dwarves killed 3 more Tomb Guard, so they're nowhere near killing that. But they did get the General Hierophant, and the Necrotect, I think, died as well. So they've done some characters. So it's pretty much going to go into points at this point and find out who wins. And it comes out to a victory for the Dwarves, a 240-point difference. It actually did come down to the Hierophant dying. That was the point difference. If Skip had not failed the last ward from the last wound the Hierophant took, he would have been up by like 107 points, something like that. So it was a very, very close game, particularly given the very difficult terrain setup that the undead had to deal with, and the fact that he kind of put the chariots in the wrong place, and they pretty much didn't fight or do anything at all. But for our first game back in well over a year, it was a good game. It was very tight, and we had a good time. I went on right after this to play against the same dwarf army with my lizard men. I got a bit of vengeance for the undead as the lizard man won that encounter. Unfortunately, because it was so late and we were trying to speed through the game, I didn't take pictures of that, so no second battle report. We are looking like we're probably going to play some more 8th edition next week, so if you guys like this, I'm hoping to have more battle reports up. Hopefully, there are still folks who care about 8th edition. But sorry that this battle report has been so rough and weird. Like I said, a year out of practice. I'm hoping to get more polished and be less wrong about things. Though I wasn't ever always right about things when I did them back when, so I don't know. I'd hold my breath for that. But I want to thank everyone for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comments below. If you have any ideas, Skip has decided, unlike the last run, he's going to stick with Tomb Kings for a while, try and learn them rather than bouncing all over the various different armies. So if you have any advice for him on tactics or unit choices or things of that nature, he's pretty disillusioned with the snakes at this point. So he's talking about putting something else in. So any advice on that matter will certainly be welcome. Other than that, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye now.